Patch culture is a strange thing, and among my favorite things about the concept of balance patches is the excitement on patch day. When those notes drop, it's like a holiday. Some people come out with the lion's share of gifts, that is, buffs for their characters, and feel like they're on top of the world. And other people watch their character get hit with the nerf bat, and it's like the developers personally came to your house and sprained your ankle. And sometimes, both happen, in the span of a year. Today I'd like to talk about an example from a relatively new game I was thinking about quite a bit recently. Zangief. SF6. I can rant about 6's balance history all fucking day, but this character in particular interests me because over the course of 2 years he's been showered with both extremely positive and negative changes, to the point that he genuinely might be the most buffed and nerfed character in the game's history thus far. And today I thought it'd be fun to talk about it. Let's talk about SF6 Zangief's patch history. And of course, to do that, we gotta go over the character on day 1. SF6 released in June 2023, and Zangief is in the base roster, but since he wasn't playable in any of the betas, most people had to wait until launch to try the character out. And needless to say, the wait hardly paid off in the end. Gief launched in a fairly miserable state. It wasn't uncommon to see top players considering him the worst character in the game. I made a video talking about him in a more general sense across the series, so I'll just give a SparkNotes summary on the character himself. Zangief is a grappler. He has an extremely powerful command grab called the SPD. It's fast, it deals insane damage, it defines his playstyle, so his goal is to get in and land it. Problem is, his mobility is poor in terms of walk speed and even his drive rush. He has pretty much no way to fight against an opponent from full screen, so his main goal is to work his way in so he can push his extremely strong mix-ups. Gief has a command normal called Headbutt, forward heavy punch, which is +4 on block, allowing him to either frame trap with normals or land an SPD that can't be mashed against, even with a 4-frame normal, which are the fastest in the game. Thus, Headbutt is an extremely important button in Zangief's kit. So that's all well and good, but why exactly was he considered bad in the first patch of the game? Something to note is that many of his flaws in this game are intended weaknesses of his archetype that Capcom is likely never ever going to change, such as his bad movement, terrible defense, and poor confirming options, but some of these aren't exactly made up for by his strength up close. Arguably, Zangief's biggest problem in this particular incarnation was low damage, which sounds like a strange weakness to have, I know. As I mentioned before, Zangief's main pressure tool is his headbutt, and after it's blocked he can frame trap with Hellstab or do an SPD. However, he could also follow up a headbutt with another headbutt. Headbutt in a headbutt catches delayed jumps and backdashes, but it will lose to most Abare, either resulting in Gief getting counter hit or trading with the button. Headbutt was +6 on hit on launch, so Gief could only link Crouching Light Kick or Crouching Light Punch out of it. The problem is, his only real option for light confirms was to spend Drive Gauge for a Drive Rush cancel or EX Lariat, and these combos generally did pitiful damage for how expensive they were. Getting better damage off of a headbutt on hit without Drive Rush required that you either land the move as a counter hit or punish counter, or you hit the move meaty for a better frame advantage. Otherwise, you're getting pretty low returns. Your only other option for a combo off Headbutt was to cancel it directly into Lariat, which is still a fairly low damage combo, and while there's a generous hit confirm window, missing the confirm means you're heavily punishable. This pressure button led to very low damage in Season 1, so it was incredibly difficult for him to actually push his mix-up, since most people would just hold up to avoid the 30% SPD and take a less damaging combo, which is a pretty big fucking problem for a grappler to have. A rather unique weakness Zangief has in this game is a severe dependence on drive gauge. Many aspects of Gief's game plan require him to spend drive just to function. Due to Lariat's limited range, confirming into combos with Zangief often requires use of drive rush cancels, which cost 3 bars, so they're extremely expensive. Lariat itself is a good anti-air, but it's very slow, so Gief prefers to use the faster EX version, which costs 2 bars. EX Lariat is also superior as a combo ender for both Oki and damage, as well as combos out of his light normals, so there's another situation where you're incentivized to spend drive gauge. Even pushing his Oki after an SPD required drive rush. In prior Street Fighter games, Gief was close enough and had enough advantage to do something to get in and push Oki after an SPD. 6's SPD in comparison sends Zangief much farther away in exchange for the high damage. Without Drive Rush, you aren't getting shit after that, and you effectively have to work your way back in. Drive Rush Oki after an SPD isn't perfect. There's still a lot of RPS involved on both sides compared to prior games, and Zangief has to do some heavy conditioning to threaten with anything since he can't get another meaty SPD, but this is only possible at all with Drive Rush. Without it, you don't get jack shit after an SPD hits, which completely gets rid of Zangief's advantage in the situation. Oftentimes, once Zangief finally got in, he just didn't have enough drive gauge to push any kind of pressure off of lariat knockdowns or SPDs without putting himself close to burnout, and he really struggled to build the bar back. Beyond the obvious problems this causes for his offense, it's not helped by the fact that he loses in burnout hard, harder than most characters. Checkmate is a term used in Street Fighter 6 to describe scenarios where a character is burned out and has zero super bar. In this situation, you have no way to defend against strings into drive impact that are tight enough, since your only defensive option here to avoid the stun is normally a super. Zangief is a bit different. His level 1 super is the only one in the game that's fully invincible, compared to most level 1 supers which are only strike and throw invul and lose to projectiles. The problem is that Zangief's level 1 is completely incapable of hitting grounded opponents. It functions solely as an anti-air grab, meaning it can only hit people in the air. So technically, if you use this against a drive impact as Zangief, you'll avoid the stun, but then the opponent will just recover from their DI and punish him during the recovery of the super. Zangief needs at least 2 bars to properly defend against drive impacts and burnout, which made his drive gauge dependency even more dangerous. Speaking on his level 1, it's probably still the worst super in the game even to this day, but it was notoriously shitty in Season 1. If you were following this game when it released, you definitely saw at least one clip of this super blatantly whiffing in situations where it really should have hit. Anti-airs are one thing, but even in combos, it was beyond inconsistent and would drop very often. It was incredibly unreliable, but Zangief had no way to combo into his level 3 super in most of his routes, so if he wanted to cash out on super meter, you had to do level 2 into level 1 combos, which invited these potential level 1 drops that would get him killed. There's some other issues that hurt the character, but I'll talk about those a bit later to illustrate the sheer volume of buffs that he got. As a result of these issues, Season 1 Zangief results pre-Capcom Cup as far as big wins go were pretty hard to come by, outside of Snake Eyes qualifying for Capcom Cup. So yeah, launch Zangief, not great. This is something Capcom clearly took notice of as he'd get some seriously large gains in the patches to follow. Actually, he was getting buffs as early as July 2023 when they released a small update with some bug fixes. One of the characters changed in this update was Zangief. They changed his level 3 to slightly increase the drive gauge he gets back when landing it, and also fixed an issue with his burnout. On launch, he recovered slower than everyone else on the cast when he was burned out. Just straight up. Took him a month to fix this. Thanks, Capcom. Coinciding with the release of Ed and the conclusion of Capcom Cup X, Capcom released a minor balance patch. This patch addressed characters who were perceived as either being overpowered or undertuned. Ryu and Jamie were specifically highlighted, and this patch also toned down JP and Luke, who were seen as among the strongest characters at that point. One of the characters adjusted in this patch was Zangief. He only got 3 of his moves changed, but they were big ones for him. EX Lariat had a number of changes made to help improve his combo consistency and light routes, but the biggest change was that it was given the ability to combo into his level 3. As I mentioned previously, in the initial version of 6, Zangief had extremely limited ways to combo into level 3. The only way he could land it was off of a crumple, such as a drive impact or punish counter dropkick. Now to be fair, this was clearly meant to balance out the fact that Zangief's level 3 is easily one of the best defensive tools in the game thanks to being completely unjumpable after the super flash and doing massive damage when done raw, but being unable to combo into it in most routes really hurt Zangief's ability to cash out, especially given the issues his level 1 super had in combos. Now though, he has a practical way to combo into level 3 and reap all the benefits of doing so, such as drive gauge reduction for the opponent. Important to note is that only the first hit of EX Lariat cancels into the super, and it's only EX Lariat. You can cancel meterless Lariat into level 3, but it won't combo. The other major buff was the level 1 super, which had its hitbox expanded downwards. Its quality as an anti-air is still dubious in many situations, but this change did improve its consistency when used in combos, especially when juggled off of Hellstab. This was a pretty small update, and it didn't address many of his major issues, but the buffs Zangief got helped him tremendously, and it was a small, nice present before the major tide change that was coming. In May of 2024, Capcom released the game's first major balance update along with the final Year 1 DLC character Akuma. This patch featured changes to everyone on the roster, including Zangief. And holy shit did they change him. Zangief didn't just eat, he got a whole fucking feast, a smorgasbord of buffs that improved just about everything in his kit. Right off the bat, let's talk about a universal change, the addition of Wake Up Drive Reversal. What this did was give Zangief a defensive option on Wake Up that wasn't super or parry, which notably lets him beat grabs on his Wake Up. Now, Wake Up Drive Reversal is far from perfect and definitively inferior to most standard EXDPs, but holy shit was it better than what he had before. Let's talk about the buffs Zangief received directly, and believe me, he got a lot of them. I'll go step by step since there's so much to cover. Standing Medium Punch, Standing Light Kick, and Crouching Medium Punch received reductions in pushback on hit, improving combo consistency, particularly when cancelled into Lariat for the latter two buttons. For Standing Medium Punch in particular, it pairs nicely with buffs to the target combo, which also received reduced pushback and a better hitbox. The Standing Medium Punch target combo was known to drop quite frequently on hit before, which left Zangief punishable, so this was a nice change. Crouching Medium Kick's advantage on hit was changed from +2 to +3. The single digit massively improves the button's combo ability as it allows for a link into Hellstab on Drive Rush. Zangief had very few rewarding ways to threaten people walking backward, so this is a really good buff for him. Crouching Heavy Punch got a lot of buffs. It was given slightly faster startup and an extra active frame, and it's now -19 on block instead of -20. Why not? The main buffs to this button were an increase in the distance Zangief travels and a ground bounce effect on punish counter, giving Zangief some new combos if he lands this anti-air as a punish counter. It's a niche scenario, and the button still isn't that great, but hey, every bit helps. Cyclone Wheel Kick, Forward Heavy Kick, is Zangief's overhead. Overheads in 6 are generally safe on block, which means that out of Drive Rush they're plus on block. Zangief Forward Heavy Kick was -12 on block, and unlike most overheads, it knocks down, so he doesn't get a combo off of it unless it punish counters. It was usually only used as a punish for blocked reversals, and it still carries that utility now, but the May 2024 patch buffed it in many ways to improve its use in neutral. It's now -9 on block with increased pushback on block and during recovery, making it significantly harder to punish if you space it properly. Now he has a much easier time using it to close the distance. Standing Medium Kick got a slight damage increase and an improved hitbox with more range. Pretty innocuous, but this was already a useful poke and it only got better. Forward Medium Kick Knee Hammer received a massive buff as the May 2024 patch made it completely safe on block, going from -4 to -3. It was also made +1 on hit, up from 0. Not only was it made safe, but these improvements to its frame advantage make it always plus when used out of Drive Rush and easier to space for better advantage and a potential combo. The pushback on hit was also reduced to make said combos connect properly, and they removed 1 frame of recovery from it. Forward Medium Kick was one of the most improved buttons in Zangief's repertoire. He can whiff it for an SPD setup or use it with Drive Rush to approach, and most importantly, it hops over lows. It was already kind of difficult to establish your lows as threats at a range where Zangief could use this baby, and now he had no reason to fear misspacing it as it couldn't be punished when blocked. Out of all the things that made peak Season 2 Zangief a major pain, this was near the top of my list. Power Stomps is a rather unorthodox command normal with a target combo tied to it. It didn't see much use in Season 1, so Capcom made the second hit of the target combo special cancelable, which is good as for some reason the third hit of the TC doesn't combo out of the first two. Standing Heavy Punch is chargeable, with the charged version gaining armor during the charge, but it's very risky due to the long startup, which can easily be DI'd, parried, or supered. The speed wasn't changed, but Capcom expanded the armor up to his arms. The notes claim that the damage was increased to 1400, but this is how much damage it did in Season 1 anyway. Crouching Heavy Kick, his sweep, had a hurt box that would extend out before the first active frame. For one of his most important counter pokes, this is bad. That hurt box was removed, and the hurt box that appears while the move is active was made smaller. Lariat, his main anti-air and combo tool, got a ton of buffs. Meterless got a damage increase and a change to the final hit. The juggle properties of the final hit were modified, allowing Zangief to get a proper juggle combo out of it. This mainly has the effect of giving him a much better stun combo, dramatically increasing his damage here. EX Lariat now has a longer input buffer time, and the first hit does more damage, making the cancels into level 2 and level 3 easier and giving Zangief more damage out of them. Zangief could combo his EX Air SPD in certain juggles, but these juggles only worked with the EX version, another entry into his severe drive gauge dependency. Now he can perform juggles into the regular Air SPD, albeit with more limitations. Still nice to have though. EX running Bear Grab, if done from far enough, has armor to make up for the very lengthy, reactable startup. The May 2024 patch made Zangief travel faster if the armor is activated by an attack. This is all well and good. Zangief enjoys all of these buffs. His combos were more consistent, and aspects of his kit that didn't function before were finally being addressed. But we're not done yet. I mentioned Zangief being extremely reliant on spending drive gauge while also struggling to build drive gauge. In order to address his hunger for super meter and drive gauge, almost every move in Zangief's kit was changed to build dramatically more super bar and drive gauge on hit. He can now build supers much more reliably, which is great, and he also has a much easier time regaining the drive he needs to spend to get into his preferred range. He gets almost half a super bar for landing an SPD, just as an example. However, the devs didn't just increase his own drive gauge building. Many of his normals were also buffed to cause more damage to the opponent's drive gauge if they're blocked or hit as a punish counter. Just as an example, Charge Standing Heavy Punch does an entire block of drive gauge on its own if it's blocked, and as a punish counter, you lose 1.5 bars for getting hit. Headbutt, his main pressure tool, which already did good drive chip in the prior patches, now does almost an entire bar all on its own. If you block 2 of these followed by a Hell Stab, you lose more drive gauge than you would getting hit by a level 3 super, which is insane. Zangief is now the drive gauge destroyer, and being passive with your defense, besides opening you up to SPD, means your drive gauge will suffer. The final change I want to talk about might sound small at first, but it completely changes the game for Zangief. Headbutt had its advantage on hit change from +6 to +7. This single digit now allows for Headbutt into Hell Stab to link naturally, no longer requiring meaty timing or drive rush. Combined with the drive gauge damage Headbutt now does, Zangief's game plan has been tied together wonderfully. The drive gauge chip from Headbutt makes the opponent want to parry, and if he makes the right read, he gets 28% minimum with an SPD. If he catches a jump or a backdash with a Headbutt, his damage from the situation is insane now, even without spending drive. Headbutt into Hellstab into Lariat in this patch did almost 3000 damage. And if the opponent does something hasty like a DP or a super, he still retains his insane damage there. His strike throw became so much scarier once the reward from either option wasn't so lopsided, and his ability to force decisions and enforce his mix-up improved tremendously. Believe it or not, it wasn't uncommon to see people placing Zangief as top 3 or even top 1 after this patch dropped. He was fucking terrifying. Now, if he was the best character or not was hard to say, especially considering this patch dropped alongside Akuma, who was insanely cracked on release, but he was certainly much scarier after the patch, and for a grappler, that can be all they need to be strong. Results for Zangief aren't always a conclusive way to gauge how strong he is, because even if he is the strongest character, he's not a character that tons of people are immediately going to drop their current main to start playing, but the existing Zangief players were definitely eating. Most notably, Kobayan, one of the strongest Giefs out of Japan, managed to win Topanga Championship 5, which features many of the strongest players in Japan, although this tournament does take place over a long period of time, and a patch actually did release over that period, but it didn't change anything I mentioned about Zangief. Zangief in Season 2 was a monster. Gief players cheered and everyone else held their drive gauge close, lest they lose it in a couple of headbutts. Despite how much they improved Zangief, this patch also painted a target on his back. He was public enemy number 1 at the time, and Capcom has a long history of being extremely careful about letting anything that even resembles a grappler be good, let alone viable. Thus, in the following year, they'd go on a campaign to nerf Zangief in the patches that came afterward, and the most insane part about this is that this campaign would start barely a month after the initial wave of buffs. On June 26, 2024, the first Year 2 DLC character dropped, M.Bison, and with him came a very minor balance patch. Most characters received bug fixes related to buffs that were given out in the May patch. Zangief was one of the characters to get an actual adjustment, and he actually got nerfed. Now, it was a very small nerf. Stand medium kick got an improved hitbox in the May patch. Apparently this button, which doesn't stand out as being egregiously broken in any way really, was a bit too strong after the hitbox improvement, so Capcom rolled it back, and the hitbox is now the same as it was on launch. In the grand scheme of things, this nerf was negligible since standing medium kick is still a great poke, but keep in mind that this was a fairly minor buff to Gief in May, and Capcom wasn't even willing to let him keep it. 35 days is the longest they were willing to let Zangief be unequivocally powerful before backtracking on their decision to juice him, and it was only going to get worse as time passed. In September 2024, Terry was released and another small patch dropped alongside him. This patch notably contained buffs for Luke and JP, two characters seen as extremely strong in Season 1, who were nerfed quite harshly in the February and May 2024 patches. And of course, it also contained nerfs for Zangief. Yeah, a patch that buffed JP and nerfed Gief. If you told someone in September 2023 that that would happen, they'd probably call you a troll. Zangief only had 2 of his attacks changed, but both of them took major hits. Let's start with Knee Hammer. In the May 2024 patch, this move was crazy buffed. Capcom made it safe on block, meaning that even if you spaced it poorly, Zangief couldn't be punished. Once again, this was seen as too strong, so Capcom rolled it back. At the time this script is being written, Knee Hammer is now back to being -4 on block. Now, to be fair, this normal is easy to space to hit on a later active frame to improve the advantage. This is clearly intended given the large amount of active frames it has compared to most of his buttons, but it's still a significant nerf. The other change to Knee Hammer was to its hurtbox, which was expanded forward. Previously, Knee Hammer could be very hard to counterpoke due to its retracted hurtbox, which would often make it appear as if your button passed through Gief after it whiffed, especially if it was a low poke, since this move has lower body invul. The hurtbox being made bigger makes it much easier to counterpoke. Knee Hammer is still very solid, but these nerfs made it way less abusable as it's now easier to check and it's punishable if not spaced properly. The other move changed in this patch was the headbutt. This button enables great pressure, damage, and drive gauge reduction for Zangief. Capcom made 2 changes to tone it down, and unfortunately, they're big changes that hurt him a lot. Headbutt was given combo starter scaling of 25%. Headbutt into Hellstab into Lariat did 2920 damage after the buffs in the May 2024 patch. Currently, it does 2510 damage. Just about every one of his routes that involved headbutt suffered similar damage loss of 400 to 600, which is a pretty drastic drop. Headbutt pressure is still extremely strong, but the rewards on hit are not nearly as high, especially on full resource dump routes. The scaling when headbutt is used in the middle of combos was also increased from 10% to 20%. While Gief maintains his incredible juggle damage, his output in grounded combos, which is where he usually uses his level 2 and level 3 since they don't work very well in juggles, is much lower now. He does have other starters such as drive rush, crouch medium kick, and crouch medium punch, but since those don't do as much damage as headbutt, his damage and ability to cash out ultimately suffers. In spite of these nerfs, they did give headbutt 1 buff. Capcom once again increased the advantage on hit from +7 to +8, enabling a link into crouching medium punch. The main reason for this buff was to enable an easier combo into level 2 super, since I guess Zangief players were having trouble doing Hellstab into level 2, and I'm not just speculating here, this was directly mentioned in the patch notes as the reason for the buff. While Zangief was by no means bad following this patch, the nerfs he did get hurt him quite a bit, and the fun wasn't even over yet. This time, Capcom nerfed his damage. Next, they'd come after his defense. In December 2024, Capcom put out a balance patch that featured changes to every character. Despite being touted as a minor balance patch, they delivered pretty huge nerfs in this patch to Cammy and Ed, as well as smaller nerfs to Akuma and M.Bison. Now, funnily enough, Zangief got nothing but buffs this patch, albeit pretty small ones. Zangief has the ability to perform alternate regular throws by holding a direction while performing the grab input. 3 of these grabs, down back, down, and forward, had the amount of super gauge that they build on normal connect and punish counter increased. This buff is actually crazier than it sounds. These throws now build over half a bar when they land as a punish counter. For the sake of optimizing the amount of super that you get, these throws are superior to an SPD in punish scenarios. The drive gauge he builds for landing Power Stomp, that weird command normal, was also increased. Zangief always enjoys improvements to the amount of drive gauge he builds on successful scoops and hits, but the key detail I've left out is that these buffs were only given out because of a universal change that was described as hurting Zangief more than most other characters. Jump cancels were a defensive technique that Zangief massively benefited from. The basic gist was that you could cancel your pre-jump frames into a special move. Pre-jump is a state that you enter after inputting a jump where you're still considered grounded, and during pre-jump in SF6, you have invul against throws. With Zangief, you could cancel these pre-jump frames into SPD, so jump canceling in SPD would make it invincible to throws. It was fairly hard to do and it required a good read, as if the opponent meatied you on your wake up with a strike, you'd get hit and be on the ground for a combo, but if you had the right read, Zangief would get a punish counter SPD in return, leading to great reward. Since Zangief's defensive options are very limited without super meter, this was an extremely strong technique for him. Throws in this game tend to do 1200 damage, and a punish counter heavy SPD does almost 4000 damage. Now obviously the risk reward is not completely 1-to-1, but a successful read on a throw leading to that kind of damage is insane. And of course Capcom wasn't going to let that one slide. In the December 2024 patch, jump cancel special moves were not removed, but instead a change was made so that normal grabs have extra active frames if making contact with an opponent during pre-jump. Basically, you can still do jump cancel specials, but they'll no longer avoid throws. This change was specifically made to normal grabs, not command throws, so while you can still perform jump cancels in matches, it's pointless in matchups against characters without command grabs, and even against characters with one, you can't use it on their normal throws. Every character is affected by this change, but Zangief is probably its biggest victim. His defensive options were already severely lacking, so losing one that was meterless, worked against regular throws, and was highly rewarding against said throws, kinda sucks. Throwing and throw looping Zangief was always a bit scary when jump cancel SPD was in play, so for most people's sake it was nice to have one less thing to worry about. This was the last patch released before the final Year 2 character Elena came out, and despite getting almost nothing but nerfs, Zangief was still doing well in tournament and he was still considered pretty strong. It was kind of up in the air how Capcom would handle Zangief in the impending patch that was promised with Elena, and it was a long wait until then. On June 3rd, 2025, Elena was released alongside another balance patch, this one presumably being intended to be on a similar scale to the Akuma patch from 2024. I think this patch underdelivered in a lot of ways, but as far as Zangief changes go, well, they're interesting to say the least. Power Stomp and its target combo were previously blockable while standing or crouching. The June 2025 patch made it so that all the hits are now lows and cannot be blocked standing. According to the notes, Zangief's drive impact was one of the shorter range DIs in the game, so the range was increased in this patch. Crouching medium kick now has 20% damage scaling as a combo starter. This was part of a universal change where every low forward that isn't cancelable was given starter scaling. Now since they made power stomps hit low, he does have an option for an unscaled low starter, but crouching medium kick is a better button, especially on Oki, so this undeniably harmed his ability to threaten people walking back. Zangief's drive rush was known for being very deceptive, as the animation where he hunches downward didn't match the hurtbox at all, so the animation was modified slightly to match up better. This is a purely visual change, and Gief's drive rush is otherwise unchanged gameplay wise. One of the changes he got was to his down forward grab, the spine buster. This is his best normal throw, as it grants supremely good Okizeme since Gief is left so close to the opponent. For this patch, the knockdown time was reduced. This is an interesting change as it worsens certain Oki situations while also creating new ones. Prior to this patch, Gief could dash up after a spine buster for a headbutt that would beat wake up 4-frame buttons. After the nerf, this setup loses to wake up 4-framers. However, the reduced knockdown time creates new meaty setups, including a safe jab in the corner that beats 10-frame supers and a meaty drive rush knee hammer that beats wake up drive reversal, so the grab itself is still very strong for setting up Oki. A major universal change made in this patch was to perfect parry. Specifically, Capcom made it so that perfect parry now requires a direction to be held, and it has to correspond with the attack being parried. If you perfect parry a low hitting attack while holding back or not holding any direction, you'll get a perfect parry, but no screen freeze. The screen freeze only applies if you hold down back while parrying. This hurts Gief in two ways. Obviously his defense is made worse, again, since on top of guessing the opponent will do a strike instead of a throw when doing a parry, Gief also has to guess on the direction for parrying meaties, but his low presence being weak means that on offense, the opponent can simply stand parry most of the time due to his strongest meaties all being mids. Capcom also universally nerfed sweeps. They used to cause hard knockdowns on hit anytime they connected, now they only do so on punish counter. This is another universal change that disproportionately hurts Gief since his sweep is so important to him as a poke and meaty. Gief had combos he could perform into sweep off of drive rush headbutt for a hard knockdown, but unfortunately the Oki he gets from these is much worse now due to the knockdown change. Okay, so I've been avoiding the elephant in the room while reading these notes out. The biggest change Gief got in this patch was an expansion to his hurt box and his push box. Both are now larger, and this applies to literally every action Gief can perform. Attacks, walking, jumping, everything. This has some huge implications for him. Namely, all of Gief's buttons effectively have worse range now. He's been made stubbier, with no change to the range of most of his attacks to compensate, other than EX SPD, EX running bear grab, and lariat. Now, these are good buffs for Gief to be fair. His combo consistency with lariat is better than ever, and the improved EX running bear grab gives him a strong way to call out backdashing after his buttons are blocked. Another major problem that the hurtbox change caused for the big guy is that it makes throws even bigger of an issue for him. In December, he lost his best anti-throw option, and with his hurtbox being made bigger, he can now be grabbed from farther away. Characters who can normally only throw loop with drive rush, such as Elena and Ed, who funnily enough had his meterless throw loop removed in this very patch, can actually throw loop Zangief even without drive rush because of how big he is. Others such as Lily and Chun-Li, who can normally only throw loop big bodies, have a much easier time throw looping Gief than any other big body, and in a game where throw loops are as strong as they are and seemingly not going anywhere even with outcry from the player base, this is a big fucking weakness to have. The push box expansion also hurt many of his setups, since now he can't get as close to the opponent as he could before. He's easier to hit and his offense is harder to push. This is up there as one of the worst nerfs he's received, along with the headbutt scaling and jump cancel SPD, and I'm not even really sure what the precedent for it was, but goddamn. This patch consisted of changes that either nerf the character outright or simply just keep aspects of him functional because of the nerfs. This is the final major patch the game has gotten. As of November 2025, every update released after has just contained small bug fixes and tweaks. Currently, Zangief is still doing well in tournament despite the buffet of nerfs. Most recently, Kobayan finished 3rd at EVO France, and both him and Itabashi Zangief have qualified for Capcom Cup through the offline points leaderboard. I think as long as he can threaten strike throw and pure drive gauge atomization with headbutt and some of his other tools, Capcom's got to do something drastic to make him truly bad. As of now, he's still a strong character even with all the nerfs, which I suppose is a testament to the sheer glow-up he got in Season 2. He has strong matchups against a lot of the common tournament characters like Ken and Cammy, which helps too. Either way, only time will tell what's next for Zangief, but it's probably going to be more nerfs. Hey everyone, this is the part of the video where I thank all my amazing channel members. Before I do that though, I want to give a big shout out to the Fat Manatee for helping out on the script for this video. So thank you very much, man. I appreciate it a ton. You're the fucking GOAT. Anyway, don't have much to say about this video. Pretty quick one, I would say, even though it ended up being like 30 minutes long, but it was just something quick that I wanted to get out of the way, you know. Of course, I'm still working on more videos for the next 2 months, but holidays are packed, man, so shit is kind of tough. But anyway, thank you to all my amazing channel members. I appreciate you all. Thank you to Old Man Han, Cammy the Killer, Jawsba, Mortis, Arg Seals, Wormy, Perfect Orange, Happy the Hap Hap, Gundog92, Gerald Say, Loose Chujin, Raymond ZX200, Nick Toyo, Basewire, Power Level Asian, Kira the Stowaway, Sonic Frontiers is a good game, Isaac the Collector, and Chandarin. Thank all of you so much for the support that you've been showing me over this past year. Again, I know that things have been slow, but you know, working through it. So yeah, I don't really have much else to say except thank you and I love you all. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. Take care. I didn't write this in the ending for the actual script of the video for some reason, so I have to say it now. I love you.